Hello, my name is Kenneth Blackburn, and in today's video, I'm going to be discussing the Impressionist period. First, some general information on the background. Impressionism in music occurred during the late 19th century and early 20th century, and the earlier part of the time period can also be called the Gilded Age. Politics during this time were characterized by scandal and corruption, but voter turnout was at an all-time high. Voter turnout was at a higher rate during this era than any other time in American history. In 1876, nearly 82% of the voting age population turned out for the presidential election, compared to 66% in the 2020 presidential election. Politicians during this era spent more time distributing government jobs to their supporters, managing urban political machines, and enriching themselves from the public coffers than dealing with important policy issues. Reform was inspired in 1881 with the assassination of President James Garfield. Due to the ineffective government, one of the most successful third-party movements in U.S. history emerged. The People's Party, or the Populists as they were called, reached national prominence in the 1890s on a platform aimed at reining in big business and helping struggling farmers. The late 19th century saw the advent of new communication technologies, including the phonograph, the telephone and radio, the rise of mass circulation newspapers and magazines, the growth of commercialized entertainment, as well as new sports including basketball, bicycling, and football, as well as the appearance of new transportation such as the automobile, electric trains, and trolleys. Around the turn of the 20th century, mass immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe dramatically altered the population's ethnic and religious composition. The newcomers were often Catholic or Jewish, and two-thirds of them settled in cities during this period. Hard times on farms led many young people to move to the city for better job opportunities. U.S. cities grew by about 15 million people in the 2 decades leading up to 1900. Almost 40% of the townships in the United States lost population during this period. Many residents who lived in the cities rented apartments or tenement housings. As far as religion, Protestant churches continued to play a privileged and dominant role in American religious life. Approximately 60% of Americans viewed themselves as Protestant during this time. Women's fashion saw an introduction of styles with long, slim, body-hugging silhouettes that revealed the natural figure, and for men, lounging suits were becoming increasingly popular and were often slim, maintaining a narrow silhouette. Some information on the music background of the period. Impressionism in music was a movement among various composers in Western classical music, where music focuses on mood and atmosphere. Impressionism is a philosophical and aesthetic term borrowed from the late 19th century French painting Monet's Impression Sunrise. Composers were labeled Impressionists by analogy to the Impressionist painters, who used starkly contrasting colors, effects of lights on object, blurry foreground and background, flattening perspective, and so on, to make the observer focus their attention on the overall impression of the piece instead of a focal point. The most prominent feature in musical impressionism is the use of timbre, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, which can be achieved through orchestration, harmonic usage, texture, and so on. Other elements of musical impressionism also involve new chord combinations, ambiguous tonality, extended harmonies, use of modes and exotic scales, parallel motion, extra musicality, and evocative titles. Sorry, my notes are being stubborn. One of the most important tools of music impressionism was the tensionless harmony. The dissonance of chords was not resolved, but was used as timbre. Again, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. These chords were often shifted parallel. In the melodic field, the whole tone scale The pentatonic and church tonal turns were used. Excuse me. My handwriting for my notes is pretty bad. The melodies were characterized by their circular movements. The timbre became the stylistic device of impressionism instead of concise themes or other traditional forms. The song choices I chose, the first one was Les Serenes by Lily Boulanger. She was a French composer at the dawn of the 1900s. She is one of the most famous female composers of all time and was writing in a time where music was even more dominated by men than it is to this day. Much like sirens, the mythological creature sirens, the beautiful music contains dark undertones with heavy use of dissonance and chromaticism. And she uses a repeating pedal tone to convey the hypnotizing ability of the sirens. I picked it because it's very mystical and eerie. The vocals play beautifully with the instruments. It's almost as if you were there when the sirens were luring in the sailors. Excuse me. English is hard. The second piece I chose is Serenes by Claude Debussy. You can see my theme. It is one movement of his Nocturno set. I think how you would say that because it's the third piece. Anyway, Claude Debussy was also a French composer, and he's sometimes seen as the first Impressionist composer, although he vigorously rejected the term. In his words, Serenes depicts the sea and its countless rhythms, presently among the waves silvered by the moonlight, and is heard the mysterious song of the sirens as they laugh and pass on. I picked it because it's similar to my other song, but the otherworldly vocalizing, it's almost instrumental in a way, very hypnotizing. And that's all I have. We'll see you next week.